Welcome back to another live stream, Thirsty Thursdays. You guys know the deal. I don't drink, but I have my tea. But today we have a special guest, and she's going to be speaking about reverse engineering and how to get into it. I had the pleasure of being in one of her classes. She's amazing. So I can I can showcase that, man, she's good. So without further ado, her name is Hahna, and here she is.
Hello, everyone. Hahna Latonick here. How you doing?
How you doing, Hahna? How's everything?
Doing very well. Just got back from the West Coast, so back here in Florida. It's good to be home, and yeah, appreciate the invite to be here.
No, likewise. Thank you for joining. It's a pleasure, and like I said, prior to even speaking on live, I want to say, me to you, thank you for your class that you did at B-Side Orlando. That's where I came across paths with yourself. And yeah, thank you so much for that reverse engineering. I'm very, very honest. That was a totally new ballpark for me. I probably took away 15% of what you were talking about, but 15 is better than 0. So yeah.
Yeah, no, besides Orlando is always a blast. I've been teaching with them for several years now, and was actually the first conference I ever taught at. So I have much love and respect for Besides Orlando, and it's actually a great conference to attend, especially if you're trying to break into cybersecurity or looking for different cybersecurity career opportunities. So yeah, shout out to Besides Orlando.
Yeah, and yeah, that was super, super cool. I went to a few little local conferences here in the Palm Beach area. And my first real conference, I went to a lot of IT expos coming from the IT network system engineering background, like VMware, Cisco Live, all that stuff. But as far as cybersecurity is concerned, obviously I went to DEF CON last year, and that was pretty cool. And, then B-Side Orlando. So yeah, so I guess introduce yourself, who is Hahna, and yeah, let's get a little bit more insight about you and what you do.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. And of course, everyone's all right, who is this? Why should I care, right? So I'm Hahna Latonick. I currently serve as the Director of Security Research at Dark Wolf Solutions. I've been working in the cybersecurity field for the past 17 years, specializing as a security researcher for the Department of Defense and several defense contracting companies. My expertise is in reverse engineering, vulnerability research, capability development, as well as machine learning. And yeah, I just really love what I do. So with that passion, I also enjoy teaching technical subjects like reverse engineering, which is how Pat and I met early in early October. So really happy to be here and to share my knowledge, answer your questions, and just share more light on how awesome reverse engineering is.
Yeah, and like I said, reverse engineering is totally new for me, and it may be new for a lot of folks out there on on my platforms or who follows me. And so I want to speak for me, right? I had zero experience in reverse engineering prior to that day, right? And I went there with a few friends, and one of my friends were like, "Hey, let's sign up for this," and his name is James, and he's like, "Oh, let's sign up for this workshop. It's gonna look cool." I'm like, "Okay, you pick one and I pick one because I know that one is not going to be for me," and that's why I picked the cloud breaching. That was so much fun. So obviously, hanging out with you for 7-8 hours that day, kudos. I loved it, but how can I expand on that, right? That was 7 hours that we hung out together. Like I said, I took about 15% of what you were saying because, it's fast, if you don't understand the applications that you were talking about, even to read what you were talking about, right clicking, looking at flows of things, I was lost. So if I wanted to start all over, I don't have coding really or programming experience, but I come from network systems. And so how can I start? And we spoke in class about certifications, about the certifications and stuff like that. But I want to start today. I want to hit the ground running. What do I do?
Yeah, great question. And for those that are attending the live stream that aren't familiar with reverse engineering, let's like set the stage, right? We'll take a step back and let's discuss, what exactly is reverse engineering. So, right, it's the practice of, examining software, hardware, or even algorithms to understand their design, their implementation, their operations, as well as their internals, especially when such information is not readily available, right? So, for example, you might not have access to source code, but you have the binary, and you need to reverse that to understand, how it works. And we perform reverse engineering for different reasons. Some common applications include, developing a competitive product. Perhaps you want to identify security weaknesses or security vulnerabilities. Perhaps you're developing a product or software feature that needs to be interoperable with, proprietary software, or perhaps you're, working for an AV company, antivirus company, and you need to develop defensive solutions. So maybe you're analyzing malware to develop antivirus signatures, right? The list goes on, but those are some of the common reasons why we perform reverse engineering. And there's different types, right? It comes in different flavors. So maybe if you do have access to source code, there's source code analysis, going through and understanding exactly what was developed. Again, from a defensive perspective, maybe you're trying to understand, what weaknesses are occurring and what mechanisms to implement to further protect that software from like a cyber attack. There's also like static analysis where, let's say you don't have access to source code, but you're analyzing a binary without actually running it yet, right? So that's what we covered
Hmm.
in our workshop where we were performing static analysis with Ghidra, right? We can
Hmm.
open up the binary, analyze its disassembly, and essentially decipher what exactly this binary is doing based on its machine instructions. And then there's dynamic analysis, where you're analyzing the binary or the software while it is running, right? So towards the end of the class, when um, someone was asking, "Hey, how can I go about like debugging this to see
Hmm.
how the registers are being populated, what the inputs and outputs are?" And so that involves dynamic analysis, where we're analyzing it while it's running. And so in the workshop, we utilized Ghidra, but there's a variety of other tools that are out there, such as IDA Pro, Binary Ninja, and for debuggers, like we'll often use GDB, which is like the GNU debugger. WinDebug on Windows. I'm a big fan of Pwn which is an enhanced version of GDB, but often used for exploit development, and poning a system, right?
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun using that. um, I have a network engineering background, network security, and so oftentimes we'll do like protocol analysis where
Hmm.
we'll open up Wireshark, we'll look at network captures just to better understand what's being communicated. And then you might use like additional target specific tools if you're analyzing routers or mobile devices, etc., especially like hardware based platforms. Then there's other tools that we might use. So that's just to set the stage for like what reverse engineering is and kind of what that day to day looks like in doing static analysis and dynamic analysis.
Yeah. So okay. So that's definitely a good overview. Thank you for that. So now we have Ghidra, like we have these tools, everything that you conveyed. Now, where can we say, for example, obviously in class there was a lot of samples, right, in that directory in our Ubuntu box. So now, if we don't have that Ubuntu box, where can we get like practice? Like, how do we get
Right.
started today?
Yeah. So great question. And luckily, the internet is our best friend
Hmm.
for the most part, right? When you're looking in the right places. So there's definitely online tutorials and war games that you can check out. When I was first getting started with this, I checked out over the wire, which is great, especially if you're new to Linux, working in a Linux environment. Over the wire provides a lot of free tutorials to sharpen your skills in that area. And then from there, I would recommend using a website called Exploit Education. So everything I'm referring to is something that I use to get started and to build up, expand my knowledge, skills, and abilities. So Exploit Education is great. It walks you through how to reverse engineer 32-bit binaries, right? So it's a good starting point. You start to get introduced to different types of like vulnerability classes, and you have the chance to actually develop like your own proof of concepts to like exploit those particular binaries. So when I was going through a few of those, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like I need to do more of this. And so they cover a variety of different types of targets, I'll just say different architectures. So like, for example, your desktop system is usually like a 64-bit Intel architecture, whereas like our mobile phones are like ARM-based, similar to like our routers and things like that. So you get exposed to a variety of different types of software that you can analyze. And then from there, if you're interested in like embedded systems, highly recommend checking out Micro Corruption. That's a great another online free war game, which will actually walk you through how to reverse engineer an embedded system. And then like one resource that I came across, which I still use to this day, it's like a great free gold mine in my mind, is open security training. All is one word. So this was really originally started from someone who used to work at MITRE and wanted to democratize access to cybersecurity, its knowledge and concepts. And so he created open security training, and I've used that for years. There's now a new version called Open Security Training 2, which includes like additional classes that, again, are all free, very thorough, very comprehensive, that you can walk through. So you can easily go from like zero to elite just by going through those courses. And of course, you can't go wrong with YouTube either, right? Checking out InfoSec Pat, you're like, hey, I now know about reverse engineering, or at least have an introduction to it. So let me go check out some other resources.
Yeah. No, and it's funny that you say that, because obviously, hopefully the moderator is taking notes, or I'll just rewatch this and remember. But yeah, I think like we were saying prior to this, right? And, and we'll transition to like you becoming a trainer, right? That's where we met. We met in a class that you taught at a B-side in Orlando. And so do you feel as though like when you teach these, because is this what you do on a day-to-day basis? Do you do reverse engineering day-to-day?
Yeah, day-to-day, yes.
Okay, cool.
Because I just teach for fun.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about like, because sometimes like when I'm teaching a concept on whatever, if I'm teaching it in a class or on YouTube, that doesn't really necessarily mean I do that on a day-to-day basis, right? So what my point of that was, like, say for example, like last night, I'm working on a lab setting up a Windows 11 box. The reason why I'm going to be doing this is because I was doing something in the wild and I came across this, and I'm like, okay, let me try to replicate this and showcase that this is real. So someone had an FTP server running on Windows 10. I'm going to do it on Windows 11 in my demo because it's very easy. You go to control panel, programs and features, turn on and off, enable IIS, and you can have an FTP server running on your client machine. And in there, you go into the IIS, right click, create an FTP site, blah, blah, blah. So now, in a while, when I did an assessment, there obviously on the internet, you have ftp.client.com, for an example. And FTP, if you guys know, if you don't know, you're going to learn today, it runs over port 21 in plain text, right? It's not, there's everything that traverses over that traffic. If you eavesdrop with Wireshark or something like that, or even if you're running like Netcat Listener, and anything that comes in, you're going to, reverse that connection. And what I was able to do is I was able to find this site, and obviously in the world of hacking or cybersecurity or the red team or the offensive side, you're going to go do what's called reconnaissance. If I know Hahna is Hahna, I can go do reconnaissance on that company. Obviously, don't ever do anything that crosses the line if you don't have any rules of engagement. I'm not condoning that, but if you have the written agreement as a client, or excuse me, as a pen tester to your client, you should have the knowledge of research. That's why you said when you made that comment, the internet can be your best friend. Use it wisely, right? Don't use it to do bad things. So there was two parts of this assessment that I was able to compromise: RDP and FTP. So we can just use RDP. You can use Hydra, Hydra, and you can use some other tools as well. And what we can do is, I knew a username that's susceptible. That might be on that RDS server that's exposed. RDS is remote desktop services. The old version of is terminal services. And I was able to compromise this and get in. So what I'm going to be doing is setting up a lab in my house so we can replicate that, right? Obviously, it's not going to be going over the internet, but the concept is the same. So I went off on this rant. So because of what you do, this topic of tonight is reverse engineering. So you said a lot of tools and a lot of cool sites to do that. Obviously, it's free 99, so you can't complain. But do you do anything like set up your own home lab to utilize it? Obviously, we did it in class, and I still have that. So is there a way to get your own stuff set up at home without going to any of these resources?
Yeah, so what I typically set up is I'll get virtualization software, whether it's like VMware Workstation Pro. There is a free version, right? VMware Player. If you're on a Mac, you can get VMware Fusion, or there's also like VirtualBox that'll work across multiple platforms. I never want to reverse engineer software that I'm not familiar with, because you don't know if it's malicious or not, on my host system, right? Because last thing I want is for my host system to become compromised or encrypted by ransomware, and that's not going to go well. So always recommend to work in a virtual like sandbox environment. So I use VMware Workstation Pro, and then I'm going to download usually like the latest Ubuntu LTS, right? So right now I believe that's 2204. And most of my reverse engineering that I do is going to be done in a Linux environment. Yes, you can do it on Windows, right? Ghidra, for example, is compatible across multiple operating systems, but Linux is just a bit more, I would say, it leans itself well when you're doing development or reverse engineering. So I'll get Ubuntu 2204, then I'll install my tools in that environment first. I'll take a snapshot once everything's configured so that as I'm going through the reverse engineering process, if anything gets corrupted for whatever reason in my environment, I can always revert back to a clean snapshot. That way I don't have to start from scratch and rebuild everything. And then, from there, that's when I start to, perform my static analysis, my dynamic analysis, developing proof of concepts, either to extract more information or to demonstrate unintended behavior due to any sort of like security weakness or vulnerability that I might discover and identify. So that's usually how I get started. If you're working with malware, for example, you want to make sure that like your VM, your virtual machine, is disconnected from the internet, that it can also, communicate necessarily to your host, because the last thing you want is for it to break out of your virtual environment and infect your host system as well. So it depends upon what you're looking at, but that's usually the same set of steps that I'll take to conduct my reverse engineering.
Cool. So we do have a question there. What got you into reverse engineering? I guess this person missed. So when did you get in? You said you've been doing 17 years. Is that 17 years of reverse engineering or 17 years of IT?
17 years of cybersecurity, but I would say in one way or another, it always involved reverse engineering, whether it's software reverse engineering or hardware reverse engineering. doing protocol analysis, trying to reverse engineer protocols that are being used if they're not like your usual standard protocols. So, I mean, even when I think back to it, like even as a kid, I was like, wow, I was reverse engineering things before I even knew what reverse engineering was, right? So,
Fair enough.
as a kid, my dad and I, we used to like rebuild computers, right? And so we would take computers apart. We would look at, the different equipment and components, and then try to like pretty much refurbish them and sell them, right?
Hmm.
And so I had no idea I was doing like hardware reverse engineering at that time. Um, and even just like I would tinker with things in the house. I remember just like I had my own like toolkit as a kid, and I was just like taking apart like doorknobs and just figuring
Hmm.
out, hey, how does this system or how does this thing work, right?
Hmm.
And so just that curiosity of wondering how things work, wondering, hey, what else can I do, right? If you ever go somewhere and they have like a screen and a text display, the first thing I think about is how many A's can I put in this field, right, to crash it. So that curiosity just really got me into cybersecurity. And so a friend of mine was actually competing in capture the flag competitions, or CTFs for short. And I was just like, hey, how do you like get into this? And so that's when he had recommended some of the tutorials that I mentioned earlier. And that's how I then got involved with participating in CTFs, right? So after you go through some of those online tutorials on war games, the next thing I recommend is participating in CTFs, because you're going to be exposed to different types of challenges that will help to build your reverse engineering skill set, right? You're going to see different types of like puzzles to
Hmm.
solve, which make you think creatively about, hey, how do I kind of like break into this software or this system? Um, with that, you're also going to be connected to a community of people that are also interested in reverse engineering or cybersecurity, right? So, like for example, at B-Sides Orlando, they had the Sunshine CTF, which is always a great CTF to start out with. If you're not in the Orlando area, definitely recommend checking out ctftime.org. They keep a running list of past and current CTF events that are happening, based on schedule, but you can also look for, different regions. And yeah, like every day throughout the year, there's always some sort of CTF that's happening. So highly recommend um, checking those out. And then also, like I mentioned, besides Orlando, attend conferences, right? The more
Hmm.
conferences that you can attend, the more exposure you're going to get to, say, reverse engineering talks or different companies that do this type of work. So whether it's your local B-Sides chapter, going to Black Hat, DEF CON, Ring Zero, CanSec West, Recon, those are like the key, I would say, the most popular cybersecurity conferences to attend throughout the year, right? So if you go to one of them, I'll probably be there. Let's get together over coffee and talk more about reverse engineering.
Yeah, no, and I'm so looking forward to, hopefully, like after this, I get these little tools and websites, and I'll start tinkering with it, and maybe I'll make a video on it. I think that'll be the POC in my head.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess we can pivot to like jobs, right? Like, so if I went through everything you said, now I'm like tinkering with CTS. If it's try hack me, hack the box, like maybe Pico CTF and time, CTF time,
Oh, Pico CTF is great. Yeah.
yeah,
Big fan.
Pico. And going back, just before we get into the dollars, going back to what you said, over the wire. Over the wire, they have like Bandit. I think it's Bandit, right? That's where you
Bandit.
really,
Yeah. Bandit and Narnia.
yeah, and that's where you really start like doing your LS, your PWD, and blah blah blah, just to get familiar with maneuvering around Linux. So that's definitely a good starting point. So now I go through all of that training, and all that good stuff. Now I want to get a job, right? So, if you ask me pen testing questions or network engineering questions, I'd probably be okay. But now, like, what kind of questions should someone expect as a RE or an entry level RE or whatever? So I guess like how much, I guess is a two-part question. Like how much should I expect being like a noob in this field? And, what kind of questions should I be able to answer?
Yeah, great question. So, what I would recommend, and I would say this is advice that can apply to like any role or
Hmm.
field, is take some time and check out websites like Indeed, LinkedIn, or just doing a Google search on like reverse engineering jobs, and just see like what job descriptions come up. Right. Even for different levels, whether it's junior, senior, it doesn't matter. Right. Just get an idea of what the roles and responsibilities are that are described in that description. What experience or skill sets are they looking for?
Hmm.
And across these different sites, across different employers, you're going to start to see a pattern of just common or core sets of skills and experience that they're looking for, right? So, for example, they're going to probably require that you're familiar with static analysis, right? So they might ask for candidates that are experienced with Ghidra, ida pro, binary ninja, right? And let's just go along those lines. um, when it comes to the interview, right, they're going to ask you, okay, can you share with us, tell me more about your experience in performing static analysis. What is your approach or methodology? Very similar to what I just described. Yep, I get a VM, set up my
Hmm.
environment, install Ghidra, open up the binary. And then, along with like the methodology, um, I'm going to look for, hey, how familiar are you with like identifying the strings within your tool of choice, right? How do you go about analyzing the inputs and outputs of that binary or that function call? Um, there's definitely a variety of different, I'll just say, artifacts that an experienced reverse engineer should be familiar with identifying or searching, right? So that's going to be like a common question, and very similar. Hey, tell me your experience and approach to conducting dynamic analysis. Oh, well, if I'm in Linux, I'm using GDB. This is typically the commands that I execute. Or hey, I'm on Windows. I'm using WinDebug. This is how I set up my environment. This is what I typically search for, right? Um, and then another common criteria that we look for is your experience with programming languages, right?
Hmm.
You don't necessarily need to know every single programming language out there, but a common set of programming languages we look for is C, C++, and Python. You might even want to throw Java in there, especially if you're developing Ghidra scripts in Java versus Python. But you can't go wrong with C and Python. If you're familiar with Linux, also just having a familiarity with Bash. But a lot of the, I would say, software that you would be reversing are going to be binaries that were originally written in C or C++.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, that's definitely, so, okay. So I guess my question to counter that, I don't have any experience in C, C++, anything. Like, so should I learn a little bit about that prior to even trying to get into the field? Or say, for example, I'm speaking on for the third person. They don't have any C, C++, anything. Uh, so you said it would help, right? Obviously, I know this firsthand because I have zero experience and I only took like 15, 20% out of that course or out of that day. So I think if I had some, maybe more ideas will click. Like the other way around, right? Like
Yeah.
with James, right? When we went into the Second one, he was totally lost. I was having a field trip because, breaching or cloud breaching was more up my alley. So is it like, do you think I should, or that person, or I'm going to speak on me, like, should I learn that prior to even getting into, the websites and the tools that you were saying? Like, would it benefit?
Yeah,
Or
I would recommend picking up the basics, right? So being able to write a program in C is
Mhm,
going to help you understand how to read a program that's written in C, and then
mhm,
therefore how to reverse engineer that program, right? You're going to see how um, that translation happens when going from source code, you compile it into a binary, and then looking at the disassembly, which is the assembled code for the machine instructions that get executed. So having that awareness is definitely going to go a long way. And along those lines, like for the most part, from a reverse engineering perspective, knowing how to read C and its corresponding disassembly is just going to be like a critical pillar of your
mhm.
career, right? But usually we're going to develop tools to help facilitate our reverse engineering process. Maybe you want to automate some steps of the process, and so in order to do that, you need to understand how to, program and develop that particular type of like capability. So being able to create that in C, Python, or even Java is very helpful. Highly recommend it. But also one thing I didn't touch upon, which is important, is understanding like computer architectures, and even just the basics go a long way. It might seem like, oh my god, I have to learn all these things. Just pick up the basics, just enough to be dangerous. And so for example, when it comes to computer architectures, x86, x64 Intel architectures, so when you're running software on your desktop, you're right, that source code is going to be converted into machine code, which gets executed based on the instruction set of that architecture. If you're running it on your mobile device, for example, you want to be familiar with ARM or other embedded system architectures like MIPS, right? You typically see that in routers. So you don't necessarily have to be a master at like writing an assembly, right? No one enjoys doing that. But if you're able to read it, that also goes a long way, and you can do a lot and be dangerous just by, again, knowing, just having that awareness of these programming languages and computer architectures.
Yeah, and I like that because I get the question a lot on the offensive side, even on the defensive side, but more on the offensive side. Like, do I need to be a programmer to be a pen tester? Do I have to know, scripting? And obviously, I've learned, a lot of scripting over the couple of years before I knew, PowerShell and the basics up in the Windows world. And but because my day-to-day stuff, like I can do some Python, or I just go to GitHub and steal it, right? That's the God honest truth.
Or Stack Overflow, yeah.
Yeah, Stack, exactly. Like that's what and I'm going to be 100% honest. Like I'll just take someone else's, why reinvent the wheel when I can just utilize this tool? And obviously I can modify it, because same thing if you're doing a CTF, going back to CTFs, right? If you understand like the PHP reverse shells, right? To pop a reverse shell, you can utilize that reverse shell, but you still have to nano into it, or whatever you're going to use, Sublime, whatever you're going to use to get in there, make your modifications, and then, re-upload that to your website, whatever you're trying to, pop a reverse shell. Like, if you tell me to write that thing from Notepad, boom, 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 hell no, I don't know where to start. But like, that's where I think understanding how to read it, like sometimes even like so many certifications, right? Like to debrief or just like to look at the source code of whatever it is, Python, Ruby, etc. Like going into it and understanding, okay, line 32 is broken, going into there and understanding what it's actually doing, the function, open up PyCharm, making the modifications, reassembling or whatever, recompiling it, and then, pushing it out. that I can do, right? Like, so does this translate the same with that? Like, is there like,
So what I would actually recommend, and it's better when you're working with your own stuff versus someone else's,
mhm,
right? So even just as a basic first step, right? Write a hello world program in C, compile it, and then open it up in Ghidra and look at what it looks like when it comes to like the disassembly and the decompiler. And you'll start to see patterns, right? You start to be able to connect the dots with, okay, this is what was programmed, right? Let's say you have access to source code, you can read it. And then looking at it in its, binary form, it'll start to, I would say, seem less of a surprise, right? But you have some that additional insight, right? You know what this program is, you know what it's supposed to do, and then from there, start to build out a more complex program. Maybe you're adding in for loops or while loops,
mhm,
if else conditional statements. Maybe you're adding additional functions, right? Foobar, whatever you want. Throw that into Ghidra, reverse engineer it, and that will actually give you very quick reps and sets to start, analyzing more complex binaries that was, created by someone else or created for like a CTF, for example.
mhm. Cool. That's super beneficial. And here we go. We got Jason. Do you utilize logs during this process? Do you watch which logs might be if they're malware or running on the machine? Um,
I would say, as just as a joke, I look at the logs when things go wrong, right? There's an error, which means that it's going to be logged somewhere. So it just depends upon what we're reverse engineering, right? If you're looking at malware, we're going to look at a variety of things, such as, did it create any files? Did it modify any registries? Did it create any processes? So there's a variety of different tools that we can utilize for that. And if we're, let's see, if we're doing any emulation and things don't go according to plan, we can look at the logs for that as well. So depending upon the tools that we're using and the targets that we're looking at, if there's any built-in logging functionality, or sometimes we'll just go ahead and we'll create our own logs, right? We'll hook in or we'll attach to a process and kind of output, data to file that we want to analyze. So, but definitely when there are errors and things go wrong, we'll check out the log files.
cool. That's beneficial. And if you can put that one off for Josh, and I can answer that. At least I'll give my 2 cents, and you can give yours. So, hey guys,
Sure.
I'm currently looking for changing the trades into the IT field. Which sector do you suggest better path, gov or civilian? I guess I'll go first for that. I guess it all depends. I think it all depends on what your preference is. And me personally, I'd rather be in a civilian sector. Um, and that's, if you're trying to, get into cyber and IT is a totally different thing, right? In my opinion. So I would say IT, as far as IT is concerned, starting out with an MSP, right? Being at an MSP would be super beneficial because instead of just being an in-house IT professional at Joe Blow Corporation, that you just learn Joe Blow's infrastructure. If you work at an MSP, which is managed service provider, you're going to be managing and providing services for multiple clients. So say Joe Blow has Juniper and Sally Mae has Cisco. Now, you're going to learn different platforms, and maybe someone has a GCP or Google Cloud Platform or AWS or Azure. And then obviously getting into whatever, so like cybersecurity, like Hannah and I do totally different things, right? I can't, I understand even this chat tonight, to be honest, 80% now, right? So, this so broad, you can go to like cybersecurity paths, and like a friend of mine loves GRC. Kudos to Kev, like, dude, you could do this all day. I will never do that. I don't like policies and procedures. I don't like documenting stuff. That's not my thing, right? Everyone has their forte. But yeah, the private sector would be ideal for me. What about you, Hannah? What is your take on that?
Yeah, so there's definitely different industries that you can go into. So yes, there's options within or opportunities within the government, right? And then within the private sector, I mean, you can go into defense contracting. You can go the commercial route and work at a place like Google, Facebook, all the FANG companies. Or, I mean, you can even, go into the nonprofit sector. I mean, it's not going to be as lucrative, but, small businesses and nonprofit organizations definitely need the help, right? They too are running businesses that need to be protected from cybersecurity attacks. Their IT infrastructure needs to be managed and maintained so that they can continue conducting business. And so, what I would recommend is to, align yourself with a sector or industry that one aligns with your morals and values.
Mhm.
Two will get you to where you want to be in your career that will help you, achieve your own personal goals and lifestyles that you want. And so like for me, I knew that I wanted to work in national security. I was affected by 9/11, and on that day, which might sound like cheesy, but in that moment, I decided that I wanted to apply my talents and skills to enhancing our national security to further protect my family, friends, and loved ones, because never wanted that to happen ever
Mhm.
again. And so for me and the work that I do, I definitely feel like it's my patriotic duty. It's aligned with my morals and values, and I can see the impact that I'm having with my work. So identify that for you. And, for example, if you, let's say you enjoy investing in the stock market, for example, perhaps you might want to work in the financial sector, right? Looking at companies, whether it's like Wells Fargo, Chase, JP Morgan, you name it. Um, there's companies within that sector that can utilize your skill sets. Maybe you enjoy working on cars in your garage. There's definitely automotive companies out there that can use your skill sets, whether it's Tesla, Ford, you name it, right? So definitely take some time to reflect on what it is you want, the type of employer in general that you want to work for, and go from there.
No, that's definitely good insight. And thanks, Josh, for that question. And hopefully that answers your question. If you have any follow up, throw it in the chat. But yeah, that's definitely some good stuff. So we have about like 15 more minutes. I don't want to take too much
Oh
of
my
that.
goodness.
Yeah,
Time flies when you're having fun.
yeah. So definitely, it's just super beneficial having you here, and obviously looking forward to seeing you again at whatever. And this is going to go into our little joke, right? When I was in, I am a ball buster, I guess, so a class clown. You're very welcome, Josh. So it was me. So when I went to B-side Orlando, it was me and two friends that flew from California to Florida. And because speaking of the automotive, you remember little Ryan, the 16-year-old kid?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So he's a buddy of ours. And they flew in. So we drove out there because it was his first conference and we, wanted to support him. So as you guys heard from the beginning of the stream, me and two other folks, we went into Hannah's classroom. And like I said, I went in there thinking I'm just here to support these guys because I had zero interest, right? And I'm going to be honest. I was like, I don't know what I'm getting myself into. And about, I think it was a second half. I think it was after lunch, if I remember correctly, or whatever. So I guess because my loud fucking New York voice, like I can't shut up. Like I have a loud pitch voice. I was quote unquote whispering to the guys, and I got yelled at, right? So I
In
was
the back of the class.
I was one of the guys in that class that Hannah yelled at because she told me to shut up, and
I just said, hey, keep it down, keep it down.
yeah. And I actually, like again, like this goes to, wrapping it up in the next 15, 20 minutes. And, I thank you for that, giving your experiences in that class. Like I said, like after speaking to you now, one-on-one, having you, for that hour, understanding a little more about it, getting a little more insight of the tools and what to expect. Now it's a little more, obviously when I was in class, like I do have ADD. So sometimes like I can only pay attention for so long, and then I have to, you see me, I got up a few times, I stepped out. I just have to walk around because I'm like, I need to get out of here. So, obviously having this one-on-one and with the tools, and hopefully the next time we link up or we speak, or, obviously maybe on YouTube, I'll make a video on a little more about reverse engineering. Maybe I'll disassemble or reassemble or whatever it is, reverse something just to showcase what I've learned so I can, keep myself accountable for that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you for not like walking out of the class and never coming back, right? For the workshop. But along those lines, like one, I think it's awesome that you supported your friend traveling out to the conference, and sticking it out with him. So what I would also recommend for folks that are watching is, let's say you can't necessarily attend a conference, right? Definitely check out different, cybersecurity networking events or meetups that are happening in your area. It's a great way to meet new people, learn about different roles in the field, as well as other, employers, as well as, reaching out to your personal network, asking for introductions, or just saying, hey, is this something that I should check out, right? And next you know, another friend of yours is joining, whether that workshop, that conference, or networking event. So some additional advice to consider as well.
Yeah, and that's totally true. So speaking about networking, right? So, and then we'll throw that question on from Owned. So how important do you think it is? Because we hear this a lot, like it's who you know, not what you know. How true do you think that is in this field, right? Like we can speak on any field. I think it goes across the board in any industry, but in cybersecurity, do you feel as though you got a lot of your positions by who you knew or about the technology and the skills you had?
Both.
Fair enough.
But more of like your network is very important,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we're not working in a world anymore where people are staying at an employer for like 30 years,
Yeah.
right? Life happens where you might need to find another position, or maybe your current position isn't providing you with the career growth that you're looking for, and you want to move on to somewhere else, right? Being able to reach out to your network for advice, for awareness of other career opportunities, and even if they don't know, they can probably introduce you to someone who does. Can help put you on the right track to identifying an opportunity that aligns with your skill sets, your experience, and what you're interested in. But for most, if not all, jobs, you can talk the talk, but you got to walk the walk, right? So with the work that I do with reverse engineering, security research, it all comes down to what you can actually do, on the keyboard, how broad and deep your knowledge is about certain, I would just say, technologies, and then how that applies in practice, right? So I'm a big fan of interviews that are practical and hands-on, rather than just testing a body of knowledge and just going through a checklist of questions. So
Mm-hmm.
I always advise whatever you put on your resume, make sure you can back it up with real experience. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's so true. And the funny thing is, Martin, the one that's writing in here, him and I go back and we work together. And I don't know if Martin remembers this, but in an interview, he actually interviewed me. And it was for a bank, actually, many years ago. And he asked me about a domain controller. And Martin, if you remember this, please let me know. So there's, for an example, DC1 and DC2, right? And you have two domain controllers, and you add Martin to DC1, right? Now I add Martin to DC1, but now the help desk went in, Martin can't log in. You go to DC2, it's not there. Martin's not on DC2, right? So where can you go troubleshoot this, right? How can you troubleshoot this? And if you say you know ADDS or Active Directory Domain Services, or you know Active Directory, doesn't mean you can just add a user. But now Martin is not there, right? Martin is not on DC2. So how can we figure out, right? You can use a utility called repadmin, right? So you can use repadmin /sync all, and we can synchronize everything that sits in sites and services. And or maybe DC2 is not a GC, a global catalog. And what does global catalog mean? So it's a writable domain controller, right? So, and it writes to everything that's in the SAM database and the sysvol and et cetera. But yeah, like I remember and ever since he told me that, now like we interviewed engineers at that bank, and I would set up on a VMware workstation, two domain controllers, and I would break DNS. I would break things and just stick them in a room, say, hey, you have 30 minutes to figure it out. Because you should, if you, like you said, if you put on your resume, you know XYZ, elemental P, and you have all these acronyms like the spaghetti soup or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
And you can't fix a basic thing. And no, it was actually super informative. Like, and because he was asking me about Cisco, because they were a Cisco shop, so Cisco ASAs. And no, the interview was not difficult. It was super informative because I felt like ever since he gave me that interview, I took what he gave me and utilized that for others. And even like educating people, right? Like, don't bullshit on your resume because you'll get called out on it. Maybe you'll get past, the Joe Blow that interviewed you, because you were able to BS them. But once you're on the job and God forbid something goes wrong, and then you're SOL, right? And then you'd be screaming for help. And then you can go to Google, you can go to your friends, but I think that knowing what you put on your resume is super critical. And there's like SQL injections, right? You can query SQLi on my resume, on my LinkedIn. You will never find that, right? You won't. And yes, I know what it is. I can do it. I can use damn vulnerable web app. I can use Juice Shop, but I'm not going to put something on my resume that I can't really talk about, right? So that's super, super important going to what you were saying. And so, yeah, Owen, you can go ahead and put that on the, so there's a question for you, Hannah. Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, this is like a fantastic segue, right? So the question is, are you familiar with TCM Security, Security's practical malware analysis and triage? If so, what are your thoughts, opinions regarding it, right? So you had mentioned earlier, you're asked often about like what certifications to pursue. And I get that as well for reverse engineering. I'll just state up front, certifications aren't necessarily required for the work that we do with reverse engineering and security research. However, certifications do help to expand your knowledge, skills, and abilities, right? So there is something that you can get out of certifications. And so one is the most popular one, but also the most expensive is the GREM certification. That's the GIAC, reverse engineering malware certification. Usually you take that after, one of the SANS courses. And then most recently, that's like 8-10 grand. It's expensive. But recently TCM Security has come out with the Practical Junior Malware Researcher certification, which is a lot more affordable. And given their other certification programs, they're much more welcoming of beginners and entry level professionals that are trying to like get into this field, right? So I personally have not taken PJMR offered by TCM Security. I'm familiar with what their course offers. And for someone that's just starting out, it's a great place to start, right? Checking out their class, and it just gets you familiar with some of the basics, right? And then from there, you can build upon and work towards more, or enrolling in more intermediate or advanced classes that are offered at conferences, or even, taking a SANS class, maybe enrolling in a couple courses on Pluralsight and Udemy. They're all fantastic resources. So, I would say my personal opinion is check it out, see if it's for you. But yeah, I would say with the quality of TCM's courses, how comprehensive they are for beginner subjects, and the affordability, it's a good starting point.
No, absolutely. Like, I love TCM Security. I love what they did with their PJPT. Before it was a PMPT, they were
Right.
competing with like the OSCP. And then maybe someone doesn't really know how to compromise the external perimeter of a network to pivot their way in. Now it's like, okay, now what can I compete with the EJPT, right? The eLearn Junior Penetration Tester. That's when they came out with their PJPT, Practical Junior Penetration Tester. So I think I might take that. It looks pretty cool, and it's pretty. I think I'm gonna do a PMPT as well. I just I've been super slammed with work and just like family stuff. So Heath or anyone from TCM, if you ever hear this, I'll be coming after it soon. But we have about 5 more minutes. Yes, Martin, I'm glad you remember about the AD diag, and I think was about the exchange stuff too, which is with a DAG. What is a DAG? With like 2 exchange boxes when you have replication in exchange servers. This is before the whole Office 365. We had our exchange. I think we were running Exchange 2007 at that bank with some AS400s, and I learned a lot. I definitely learned a lot. And Martin, definitely connect with him. He's definitely an awesome resource. And I want to thank you, Martin. Maybe I'll have you on a live stream. We can talk, shoot the stuff, and thank you for everything you've taught me. You were a big part of that as well. But if there's no other questions, obviously we can wrap it up now. And CCR clusters. Yeah, you asked me that.
I feel like Martin's interviewing you on this live stream right now. I feel like he's testing you.
Yeah, I don't know what CCR clusters are. What is that? I don't know.
Find out on the next live stream.
Exactly. Yeah. Awesome. So yeah, I'm not sure if that's my Discord, and I thank you so much for your time, Hahna. And I guess the last thing is, how can someone, if they want to connect with you, if they want to reach out to you, have any questions, how can they reach out, connect?
Yeah, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, Hahna Latonick, as well as on Twitter or X or whatever it's going to be called tomorrow if it exists. My handle is at Hahna Kane. And yeah, feel free to reach out. We can keep the conversation going with any additional questions that you may have. But definitely appreciate the invite. I'm glad we got connected at B-Sides Orlando. And yeah, tonight I've had a blast, right? So I know we're approaching 8 o'clock, and not many people want to spend their evening after work, doing a live stream like this. But I had a lot of fun, and appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much, and keep on doing what you're doing. Keep educating folks, and until next time, have a blessed day.
Keep being awesome. Take care.
Thank you.